I have hit the recording, so take it away, Miss Robin.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Rhonda, for that lovely introduction. We're going to take a look today at some of our new 2018 implementations. The first thing that we're going to be looking at are the histology implementation documents. So where is this all coming from? Well, you've got your pathologists from the World Health Organization and your ICD0 committee from the International Agency for Research on Cancer, and they get together and look at the different histologies that are coming across the pathology labs. And they have determined that there are a number of new histologies and new terms that need to be implemented. So what they do is they publish a set of blue books for each of the sites, and they introduce the new pathology into these blue books. So currently, we don't have plans for a new ICD-03 manual yet. So what they are doing is developing a crosswalk that helps us decide what do we do when we come across one of the new histologies. So as I mentioned previously, there's no immediate plans for a release of a new ICD-03 manual or an ICD-04 manual. There are 37 new ICD-0 codes, 15 codes with behavior changes, and 114 new terms for existing codes. So although this seems like a lot, I don't think in the World Health Organization powers that be minds is enough to publish a whole new version of the manual. So what we will be doing is referring to implementation documentation that NACER has provided for us on their website, and I have provided the link for you here on this slide. So what we will have are change tables, which are available in a PDF and Excel format, so whichever is most preferable to the user is what you will use. So the steps for using these are first, excuse me. That's one of those robocalls. Sorry about that. So we will be looking at the introduction to the solid tumor manual next. But what you will do is if you come across a histology that's not familiar to you, or even an older histology that there might be some more instructions for, the first place that you look is in the histology tools of the new 2018 solid tumor manual if it is one of the newly revised sites. The newly revised sites are head and neck, colon, which also includes rectosigmoid and rectum, lung, breast, kidney, urinary sites, non-malignant CNS, and malignant CNS and peripheral nerves. And note now that these peripheral nerves are included with the malignant CNS. There's a search feature, which I will demonstrate later, that you will be using. If you do not find your histology in these tables for these specific sites, then you will look in one of the change tables from the NACER implementation. You will use the search icon, which you will see as a magnifying glass, and if you don't have the latest version of Adobe installed, you can simultaneously press Control F, and that will enable your search feature. The Excel tables have filters that enable easier searching. If you do not find your histology in this new documentation, then you can lastly refer to your ICD-03 manual. And if it is not found there, then you should send a question to Ask a SEER registrar. So the first example of the table that we will look at in just a second is the PDF. It has 5 columns. It has a status column to show whether it is a, I don't know what this meeting viewer thing is. Just minimize that. It has a status column that indicates whether we are dealing with a new behavior, code, term, or new term. The next column will be the actual code. The next column will be the term. And when we look at the PDF version of the table, notice that preferred terms are in bold font. The next column is reportability, Y for yes, N for no. And the last column, very important, is coding instructions. So it's very important that you look at these because they will provide instructions for coding pre-2018 cases too, using the crosswalk. Many of the new codes and terms are site-specific and do not apply to all sites. Applicable C codes will be noted next to the term in bold font. So here is an example of the PDF version of the table. The 5 columns, status, morphology code, term, reportability, and comments. And if you notice just at this first histology right away, this ACE&R adenocarcinoma 8551, and look at the comments, that this is for lung primaries only. And if you see ACE&R carcinoma prior to a 1/1/18 diagnosis, you would use the old code of 8550/3. And for prostate, for all years, you would use 8140/3. Okay, now the next table we will look at will be the Excel table, and it has 7 columns: your status column, your morphology code, your behavior, and then you'll have a column that shows whether or not your term is a preferred term or an alternate term. The preferred terms are indicated as true, and the alternate terms are indicated as false. And then you will have the label, or the actual term, the reportability column, and the comments column. So let's take a look at that. And there you see your 7 columns: status, histology, behavior, preferred. Remember, true is the preferred term, and false is an alternate term, reportability, and comments. Okay, so now we'll have a little demonstration. So we have a 2018 breast pathology positive for pleomorphic lobular carcinoma. So we know that breast is one of the revised sites for the 2018 solid tumor rules. So we need to go to the breast solid tumor rules. Notice over here your bookmarks column. Go to the equivalent terms and definitions, and then Table 3, specific histologies. Go to your search icon, the little magnifying glass. That drops down the search box, and we're going to type in the term pleomorphic. Okay, so we keep searching until we find pleomorphic carcinoma in situ. And here it is, 8519/2. So that's our answer there. Our next example is 2018 colon pathology, positive for micropapillary carcinoma. Colon is one of the revised sites for solid tumor rules, so we need to go to the rules for colon and go to the histology table, do a search, type in micropapillary, And here we come to micropapillary carcinoma 8265. Our next example, 2018 right lung pathology positive for acinar adenocarcinoma. So we go to the lung solid tumor rules, go to histology table, do a search, acinar. Okay, and here we have acinar adenocarcinoma 8551, and it also tells you here for lung only. Okay, our final example, 2018 biopsy of ampulla of Vater positive for pancreatobiliary type carcinoma. Now this is not one of the newly revised sites, so you need to go to one of the NACER implementation tables, whichever one you like using the best. The PDF table, we can search using that. So we use our search and we type in pancreatobiliary. And here you see pancreatobiliary type adenocarcinoma 8163/3. Our example was pancreatobiliary carcinoma, which we find down here if you hit next, and it's the same code. And notice the instructions, cases prior to 1118 use code 8255. Okay, if you want to use your Excel table to search for that, I'll make things a little bit bigger there for you. Okay, notice the filters here in the Excel table. So if you just want to click on your drop-down filter in the label column, deselect, select all, type in pancreatobiliary, and that brings up all your choices here. And notice here, adenocarcinoma pancreatobiliary type in the preferred term column, that says false. So that is indicating that that is the alternate term, and the preferred term is pancreatobiliary type carcinoma. Both have the same code though, 8163/3, and notice the comment for both. Cases diagnosed prior to 1118 use code 8255/3. So that's a brief demonstration of how and when to find these newer histologies. I will reserve questions for the end of the second presentation and can take all questions then. So now we will move on to everything you wanted to know about the 2018 solid tumor rules. So as I said in the other presentation, 8 site groups have been revised for 2018. Head and neck, colon, which includes rectum and rectosigmoid, lung, breast, kidney, urinary sites, non-malignant CNS, malignant CNS, and peripheral nerves. The other sites and the cutaneous melanoma modules are planned for revision for 2019 implementation, so be on the lookout for those. So where do you go to find the solid tumor rules? Okay, you are going to go to the SEER website. And I hope everyone has taken a look at the new SEER website. When you get there, hover over this registry operations, and you see over there under reporting guidelines, the link for the solid tumor rules. So you click on that link, and it gives you all the general instructions and the 8 revised sites, and the other sites, which is going to be revised later, but they have it here. There's also a revision history, which contains a change log. I'll show that to you a little bit later, but the change log shows you all the updates that have been made to each of the different modules. So be sure you look at that frequently, because there are frequent changes made. The last change to one of these newly revised sites, I believe, was in the head and neck chapter, which was made on August 30th. I did notice over here the other day on 9/11, they updated a change in the other sites, which is not a newly revised site, but if you look at that, we'll look at it later, it was just something that had inadvertently got left out that they put back in. So my advice to you is, rather than downloading these modules as PDFs, to always use your solid tumor rules from this SEER website, because everything is live and updated on the day that you use it. If you download a PDF and depend on using that, then you may not be able to capture an update that was made after the date that you did your download. So use the live version. Okay. I believe we as registrars, we have a tendency to overlook reading the general instructions to our manual. So I'm going to go over with you in detail today the instructions from the introduction and general instructions for the solid tumor rules. So first we will begin with the instructions of using these solid tumor rules. You are to apply the 2007 multiple primary and histology rules for cases diagnosed from 1/1/07 through 12/31/17 for the 2018 revised site groups. Apply the 2018 solid tumor rules for cases 1/1/18 going forward for the revised site groups only. Apply the 2007 MPH rules for cases diagnosed 1/1/07 through 12/31/18 for all other sites not included in the 2018 revised site group. And our exceptions include, which I mentioned previously, is that rectum and rectosigmoid are now included in the colon rules, and peripheral nerves will now be included in the malignant brain and CNS rules. The other sites module should be ready for 2019 implementation. Any questions should be submitted to ask a SEER registrar, and I've provided the link for you here in the slide. Okay, we're going to demonstrate some navigation features for the solid tumor rules. We'll demonstrate navigating between hyperlinks by using your previous view, the bookmarks, and the footer links. We'll also look at the search function. All of these are available if you have your most recent version of Adobe Reader Acrobat installed. So be sure you're updating to the most recent version. So let's take a look at some of these navigation features. Looking in the colon solid tumor rules, like I said, use your bookmarks over here on the left menu, because that helps get you quickly to where you need to be in the manual. If you are, say for example, you're over here in the multiple, and then over here in the multiple primary rules somewhere, and you're at M3, and you want to look at something back at the histology table. So you can go over here on your left side menu and go to the histologies, and then you can do your search for whatever you're looking for in your table. Now, if you want to go back to exactly where you were before you came to this histology table section, go into the document and right-click and click on Previous View, and that takes you right back to where you were before. Whereas if you were over here at the specific histology section and you went to the hyperlink down here at the bottom where it says Multiple Primary Rules and clicked on that, that would take you back to the beginning of the multiple primary rules. But if you do that previous right-click view, it takes you back to where you exactly were in the document. Okay, and then we demonstrated the hyperlinks. Down here at the bottom of the page, there are hyperlinks, and then throughout the documentation, there'll be hyperlinks like within the document that you can hyperlink to. Okay, and then also, here's your search function, the little magnifying glass, and that drops down your little search box here where you can type in a prevalent term for what you're searching to, and it will just go to wherever that term is. And if you hit next, it goes, if it appears in the documentation again, it'll go to that spot. And you can do the same thing with previous too. If you do not have the latest version of Adobe, if you simultaneously press Control F, it will also bring down this search box for you. Okay, looking at some of the general equivalent terms. And and with are used as synonyms when describing multiple histology within a single tumor. Adenocarcinoma is synonymous with glandular carcinoma. De novo, new tumor, and frank are all synonymous, with frank now being considered as an obsolete term. Multicentric and multifocal are synonymous. Simultaneous, at the same time, and prior to first course treatment are synonymous. Topography and site code are synonymous. Tumor mass, lesion, neoplasm, and nodule are all synonymous. These terms are used only for determining multiple primaries and not for case finding or reportability. You'll also need to refer to the site-specific schemas for any additional terms that are synonymous. Type, subtype, and variant are synonymous, and these are new terms that are used that were not used in the 2007 rules. These rules do not apply for hematopoietic primaries. You will have to use that separate heme manual for the rules for those. Use these rules to determine the number of reportable primaries. Do not use these rules to determine reportability, stage, or grade. These rules are effective for cases diagnosed 1-1-18 and after. Do not use these rules to abstract cases prior to 1-1-18. Use the rules in the following priority order: general instructions, followed by site-specific equivalent terms and definitions, the M rules, and then the H rules. This next instruction we had in the 2007 rules, but I highlighted it here because it is very important to remember. Do not use a physician statement to decide whether the patient has a recurrence of a previous cancer or a new primary. Use the multiple primary rules as written unless a pathologist compares the present tumor to the original tumor and states that this tumor is a recurrence of cancer from the previous primary. So how to use our multiple primary rules? We use the multiple primary rules to decide on the number of primaries to be abstracted. Do not count metastatic lesions when determining which module to use. You would count only lesions or tumors that are within the same primary site. When the number of tumors is unknown or not documented, you'll use the unknown if single or multiple tumors module. Do not code multiple primaries based on biomarkers. Use the 2018 solid tumor site-specific rules for these newly revised sites. Use the 2007 multiple primary and histology rules for all other sites not included in the list above. Use the other sites rules for 2007 for tumors that occur in primary sites not covered by the site-specific rules. Choosing the primary site. Use the information from tumor boards, op notes, PACT reports, imaging, and clinical diagnoses to determine the primary site. When all you have are metastatic lesions, use the primary site documented by the physician. If there is no primary site, code C809 and use the other sites module. That would be from the 2007 rules. Choose the appropriate module, single tumor, multiple tumors, or unknown if single or multiple tumors. And remember, you do not count metastatic lesions as the multiple tumors. When tumor is described as multicentric or multifocal and the number is not mentioned, use the unknown if single or multiple tumors module. When there is a tumor with separate microscopic foci, ignore microscopic foci. Rules are hierarchical, so stop at the first rule that applies. Timing rules. Each solid tumor site group includes timing rules. The rules differ by site, so do not try to commit these to your memory. Abstract multiple primaries when there is a subsequent tumor after being clinically disease-free for greater than X years after the original diagnosis or last recurrence, with the X being equal to whatever the number of years specified in the timing rules for whichever site you're working on. Abstract a single primary, the invasive, when an invasive tumor is diagnosed less than or equal to 60 days after an in situ tumor. So if you have abstracted the in situ tumor and have already submitted that to the state, you'll need to update that and change it to an invasive tumor and let the state know about that. 1 year is equal to 365 days. Clinically disease-free means that there was no evidence of recurrence on follow-up. When there is a recurrence less than or equal to X years of diagnosis, the clock starts over. The time interval is calculated from the date of last recurrence. In other words, the patient must have been disease-free for greater than X years from the date of last recurrence. So you're not going to go back to your diagnosis date, but the clock starts over at the recurrence date. H rules. So our new rule is we do not code histologies or subtype variants when described by ambiguous terms. Now these are the ambiguous terms that SEER and STOR will use for reportability, but these are not to be used for identifying histologies. Ambiguous terminology from the SEER and STOR manuals are used to determine reportability, not to determine histology. So NACER has provided the updated histology tables at their website, and I have provided the link here, and that is what we demonstrated in the previous PowerPoint. Do not use histology rules to determine reportability. Effective for cases 1-118 going forward for the 2018 revised site list only. All other sites use the 2007 rules. Code the histology prior to neoadjuvant treatment. Neoadjuvant treatment can change the histologic profile of the tumor. Rules are hierarchical within each section. For each site, priorities include biomarkers, tissue histology, cytology, imaging, and physician diagnoses. Use the priority order that precedes the histology rules for each site. Priority order will differ by site. Biomarkers and/or tissue pathology always take precedence. And just as an aside, SEER has indicated that right now there are not any histologies that are identifiable by biomarkers, but they believe that that is on the horizon, so to speak. So they've kept this statement in here regarding biomarkers, but for now we are not using biomarkers for determining histologies. The specific types of scans will also differ by site, so you need to refer to the rules in each site for the priority of scans to use. Definitions. These terms and definitions apply for all tumors except lymphoma and leukemia. Bilateral is relating to the right and left sides of the body or of a structure. Bilaterality is not an indication of single or multiple primaries. You have to refer to the rules in each site, in each chapter, to determine whether or not a bilateral involvement indicates a multiple or single primary. Clinical diagnosis is one that is not microscopically confirmed. It may be based on information from imaging or the clinician's opinion. De novo in cancer is the first occurrence of cancer in the body. Focal is an adjective meaning limited to one specific area. A focal cancer is limited to one specific area or organ, and it can be microscopic or macroscopic. Focus, remember focal is macroscopic. I remember it like it has an A in it, so it can be macroscopic. Focus is only microscopic, and it is a term used by pathologists to describe a group of cells that can be seen only by a microscope. And foci is the plural of focus. Recurrence, and this was stated in our 2007 rules in the general instructions too, but it's important, so I put it in here too. Recurrence has two meanings. A recurrent cancer can start from cancer cells that were not removed or destroyed by the original therapy. So this is the reappearance of disease that was thought to be cured or inactive. Basically, it's the same cancer that came back. And another definition of recurrence is a type of, is a new cancer, a new occurrence of cancer in the same primary site, such as a previous adenocarcinoma of the right lung and a subsequent squamous cell carcinoma of the left lung. this type of recurrence arises from cells that have nothing to do with the first cancer. So this is a new incident, so to speak, of cancer. And then I wanted to remind everybody to look at the change log, and we'll take a brief look at that again. So if you go to the home page of the Solid Tumor Rules and go down to this revision history and click on the change log, it shows you all the different changes or updates that have been made to each chapter. So be sure you're taking careful note of that, because even though they have published the final additions, there's still, updates and changes that are being made. So be sure you refer to that. And you can also, just if you're on the Solid Tumors homepage, they will have next to each chapter when the last update was being made. So now I can take any questions.
All right, thank you, Robin. Attendees, please use the chat feature if you have any questions. As we're waiting for some questions to come in, please be reminded that this webinar is worth 1 CE hour. It is also a category A CE for NCRA, and then Carly will be sending you your certificate as well as a survey to let us know how we're doing and what other topics we can do for these future webinars. Robin, you did a great job, so much so that nobody has any questions.
Okay. It's a lot of information to take in, and I know some of you that attended the state workshops in August and September, this was repeated material for you, but it's good to get repetition because this is a lot of new material to take in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we got a question for you, Robin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pressing the wrong button. If you abstract a 2018 case in January 2019, then an update comes out after you've already abstracted the case, should you go back and correct that case?
You can. You can send in a modified record. But, I mean, if the case is a 2018 diagnosis, you will abstract the case, applying the 2018 solid tumor rules if it is one of the revised sites. If it's, from the other sites module or the melanoma, you would still apply the 2007 rules until those sites have been implemented with the 2018 updated. They said that they are anticipating those being ready for 2019 implementation.
Perfect. We got another question, but this is not pertinent to what your presentation is, but yes, the NCRA conference number will be on the certificate. Okay, here's another one. So for histology rules, if the pathologist says carcinoma, most likely papillary carcinoma, we can't use the term papillary carcinoma.
That is correct, Rhonda. And we did have someone in one of our workshops, though, if the pathology comes back and all it says is consistent with, say, for example, consistent with squamous cell carcinoma, you would report that as squamous cell carcinoma. But if your pathology report comes back with just saying adenocarcinoma, most likely papillary, you're only going to code the carcinoma, because the rules tell us not to use those ambiguous terms, those reportable ambiguous terms that we use for reportability, that we are not to use those for coding histology. But I did submit a question to SEER about that. What if all you have is your path report says consistent with squamous cell carcinoma? Then SEER answered back, yes, you can code the squamous cell in that scenario.
Perfect. And this is a kudos that love this presentation, especially with the navigation part. It makes it clear on where the information can be found. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, well, if there are no other questions, thank you, everybody, for joining. You should be on the lookout for the email from Carly within the next week to 2 weeks. Oh, no, another question came in. I lied. The solid tumor manual contains the NPH rules for those cases that have not been changed. Is this correct?
I was looking at that the other day. I'm going to look at it now. It does.
Meaning that we would have to use both manuals.
Yeah, what I do is I keep in my on my own personal computer, on my C drive, I keep a copy of the 2007 rules so that I can refer back here, because it looks like on the home page for the solid tumor manuals, they have the other sites and the cutaneous melanoma here where they've got the NPH rules, and you can use that from there if you like, because they did throw in an update for the other sites on 9/11/18. We can look at that real quick. And what that was where is that? They said Rule M13, a frank in situ or malignant adenocarcinoma and an in situ or malignant tumor in a polyp are a single primary. The rule was inadvertently deleted. The other sites' 2018 rules should match the 2007 NPH version. Well, they don't have the other sites' 2018 rules posted yet, to my knowledge, but they just inserted that rule back in there.
Perfect. All right, any other questions? Those were great questions. All right, so thank you for joining us. Like I said, Carly will be sending out an email within like the next 2 weeks with your certificate as well as a link. Thank you, Robin, because this presentation was excellent, and I agree, repetition is going to be the key. I'm just looking forward to being able to finally get to abstract this hands-on once, you know, Metric and CNET and all of them get their act together, and we try to get everything together, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for all those that participated today. You did receive the PowerPoint presentations for this, and we look forward to trying to continue these series next year. Hope to see y'all in Charleston in November.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Robin. Perfect.
You're welcome. Y'all have a good day.